I go to university 2 hours away by ferry from the mainland where my family lives. Sometimes on weekends I would go visit them, which would require me to take a 23-kilometer bus ride to the ferry terminal. This bus ride was usually very boring and long, so I would try to make the best of it. Where I live, we have double-decker buses, and I would always sit at the top and listen to music. One Friday, on my way to the terminal, I was up on the top level as usual, when a man who looked to be about 40 came up to sit. I made note of his presence, but I didn't think much of him, other than he looked pretty beat up. Shaggy hair, stained brown hoodie, a silver chain on his neck, but I try not to judge. It's important to note that at the time, I was 18 years old, and I am a small female. I don't ever want to have to be hyper-aware or judgmental, but I was brought up to always take note of who is around me, particularly men, just for safety. The man sat multiple rows ahead of me, and in the beginning was initially minding his own business. I was just listening to music and looking out the window, minding mine. It wasn't until partway into the trip that I noticed that he had moved one row closer to me. Weird, but whatever. Maybe his seat was dirty or something. He then proceeded to move closer and closer until he was in the seat directly in front of me. It's important to know that the top level of the bus is only him and I. Suffice to say, I was getting uncomfortable. Still giving him the benefit of the doubt, I decided to phone a friend and have a conversation just to break the uncomfortable silence. I text my friend SOS, which we do when we need the other to call us for whatever reason, and he calls me and starts a normal conversation. It was at this point that the man decides that he wants to start talking to me. I tell my friend to hold on, and I take out my earbuds to hear what he's saying. He starts asking me if I know any good place to get a haircut, and I say that I don't. I start to put my earbuds back in when he asks what a girl like me is doing taking this bus alone. It wasn't late yet, but it was getting dark, so maybe he was just concerned for my safety? LOL. I told him I was going to the ferry terminal, everyone on the bus is, and try again to put my earbuds in. He continues on, telling me his life story about how he's in the military, how his kids don't talk to him, showed me his dog tag, and told me that he rides this bus back and forth every day just to have something to do. He has no intention of taking the ferry, though. This is important for later. He's growing increasingly annoyed that I'm not reciprocating the conversation. He tells me it's quite rude to ignore people when they're just trying to have a friendly conversation. At this point, I'm starting to get quite creeped out. I politely inform him that I'm not trying to ignore him, but I'm on the phone with someone and I would like to resume my conversation. This irritates him, and he asks who I'm calling, to which I respond, a friend. He notices the male name on the phone and makes a weird face. He tells me to hang up and then asks to see my phone to find a hair salon where he can get his hair cut cheaply, which I obviously refuse. I then get up and try to move to the bottom level of the bus so that I'm not secluded with this weirdo upstairs alone anymore. My friend on the phone has no clue what's going on as I collected my stuff and start moving. He tries to tell me that it's not my stop yet, but I ignored him. I go down to the front lower level and stand near the bus driver until we reach the final stop. The man had come down the stairs and seated himself close by, but didn't try to talk to me further. Most likely he didn't want to suss out the bus driver. I thought it was over, but alas, no. I reach the terminal, pay for my ticket, and go to the waiting area. You can't enter the waiting area unless you have proof of a ticket purchase. Well, guess who comes down the escalator? Mr. Dog Tags himself. My heart sank. There are a couple people in the waiting area, so I wasn't too worried about my immediate safety, but I was more worried about having to be trapped on a ferry boat with this guy for 2 hours. He paced up and down the walkway outside the washrooms, repeatedly checking to see if I had moved, briefly ducking into the men's room and coming back out after a couple of minutes. He goes up and down the escalator a few times and continues to catch my eye either smiling or just staring. I'd had enough at this point and started looking for other passengers that I could sit with for security. I see a woman in her mid-40s and my teenage instinct to seek maternal security kicks in. I bring my bag and politely ask this woman if I can sit with her. I quietly explain what was happening, and this woman goes full mama bear. Bless her soul. She told me that she had noticed the man too and got a bad feeling. She had 2 daughters around my age. She insisted I sit with her on the ferry too, just in case. The girl sitting across from us in the seating area overheard and offered her support as well. We boarded the ferry together, and I didn't notice the man as we boarded. I assumed that he had left the terminal, as he said that he never intended to catch the ferry in the first place. As we're sitting on the ferry, my heart drops when I see him coming towards our seating area. The nice mom assures me that she'll handle it if he dares approach us, but he noticed that I'm not alone anymore, and I guess decided to do a lap instead. We later saw him trying to bother another young girl, but luckily her boyfriend returned from the food lineup and the guy took off pretty fast. For the rest of the ferry, he was just sort of lurking, checking in to see if I had gotten up or left my group. I did not, even though I had to pee really bad. Not worth it. The girl we were with eventually flags down a ferry worker and informs him of the suspicious person, and Dogtag hightails it to the other side of the vessel. When we reached the other side, the mom insisted on walking me directly to my dad's car in the pickup zone before leaving the terminal herself, and that was the end of it, thankfully. I wish that woman nothing but wonderful things in her life. She was so kind and protective. I genuinely don't know how the evening would have played out without her. I don't know what this man's plan was. I don't want to. But being followed on 2 forms of transportation is definitely a new one for me. This happened to my ex and me in 2014. We were seeing the movie The Edge of Tomorrow at the Cineplex. When we got into our theater, it was somewhat crowded. We decided to sit at the top row near the center. We sat down and I noticed a guy getting up and moving seats to the aisle seat on the row below us. People were still seating, so I didn't think anything of it. The movie starts and I get this weird feeling. I look out the corner of my eye and see that he is still staring. I look back at him and give him a "fuck off" look. He gets up and walks down the aisle and out of the theater. Cool, I thought, and I go back to the movie. A few moments later, the guy shows up on the other side of the theater, comes up the aisle, makes his way to the row of seats in front of where we're sitting, and sits down in the seat directly in front of my ex and me. I think, WTF? A couple minutes pass and he turns around in his seat and stares at my ex and I. It's at this point my ex notices him. She says, "Can we help you?" To which he didn't respond. I'm getting creeped out at this point, but also angry. He continues to stare. I try to ignore him and watch the movie, but he's staring at me and my ex, still turned around in his seat. I say something along the lines of, "What is this dude's fucking problem?" to my ex, loud enough so that people around us noticed. The guy still stares. I tell the guy to stop staring at me and leave us alone. We get a few "shh" from the people in the theater, and nothing seems to faze the guy. My ex is creeped out by now and says that we should leave. I'm furious because this has been going on for 20 minutes at this point. Looking back, I realize that we should have told management and got them involved. That would have been the smart choice, but we get up and leave. My ex needs to go to the restroom, so I stand in the lobby to wait for her. A few moments after we come out of our theater, the guy comes walking out. He sees me and stops. I'm pissed off completely now, and I start walking over to confront the guy. He walks off and outside. I go back to the restrooms until my ex is ready to go, and we leave. We walk outside, and I notice that the guy is standing off to the side a few yards away on the left of us. My ex and I park to the right. I thought about confronting the guy outside, but I'm ready to just have this night over with and move on. We are walking to the car, and I see in my peripheral vision that the guy has started walking a few feet behind us. I'm enraged at this point and turn around and yell, "What the fuck do you want, motherfucker?" or something in that neighborhood. He stopped when I turned around and just smiled. I notice he has a camera like a GoPro in his hands and is filming us. I confronted him about filming us and demanded to know why. He doesn't say anything and just smiles. I know now we were giving him what he was after, but at that time I didn't understand why this guy was messing with us. My ex pleads with me to leave and get out of there, so we go to our car. The guy continues following and filming. We get in the car and he stops at the bumper of the car beside us. We pull out and he gives us another smile before we drive away. I worried for a little after that he would try to identify me by my license plate number, or if he might have followed us, but nothing came of it. I've met my share of creepers and weirdos since then over the years. I think that the fact that I was in high school at the time and didn't have much experience dealing with those kinds of things is why this encounter stood out to me. A few years ago, I was 17, just graduated from high school, and I got my first job at a Christian camp near Yosemite in California over the summer. Mainly the people I worked with were great, really sweet Christian college kids, the good kinds. There was one guy though, I'll call him Carl, who I frankly did not like. Carl was tall, handsome, and charming. He had curly golden brown hair and a smile that could stop your heart. His eyes, though, were dead. He never got those little crinkles in the corner of his eyes when he smiled. It was like the top half of his face was just dead. There were things I didn't like about Carl right off the bat. His eyes, for one, that dead smile of his. He also never asked for anything. He tried to twist your arm. He just very softly, very slowly tried to manipulate the situation until you almost felt like you owed him. Each time, it felt like part of my brain shut down, like it slammed a door shut, and there was a very clear feeling of no, this is not right. Save him some food, but do not walk out into the woods to give it to him. Something is wrong. I got along with most of the little cliques at camp. No one really disliked each other, as far as I knew. We just kind of broke off into groups based off of what we liked to do in our free time, or who we worked with the most. Carl, though, seemed to make friends one-on-one within a clique. By the time he left the group, it was decimated. They were fighting, not speaking, didn't trust each other. I know this isn't a lot of evidence, but I'm trying to paint a picture of a man who just seemed wrong. One day, everyone in camp decided to go to Fresno. We were tired of camp food and wanted real dinner, maybe see a movie or go bowling. I was off work last. Now, at camp, we had a sign-out sheet. Being so close to Yosemite, we often went hiking, so if we left, we had to put our name down, along with where we were going, when we left, and when we should be expected back. This way, if something happened, they would know when to start looking for us. So I put all of my info on the sheet and headed down to the parking lot. My friends had all divided up into their cars. I didn't drive, and I jokingly asked if they forgot about me. They said that Carl had said that I could ride with him. I looked around, but didn't see Carl, although I had seen his name on the sign-in sheet. All the hair on my body stood on end. I was terrified to get in the car with this guy alone. He felt so wrong, so off, just not right. I don't know how else to say it. My friends were telling me I had nothing to be worried about. It would be fine. I saw Carl walking towards the parking lot, the dead smile on his face, and everything in me was screaming not to get in the car. I said that I was tired and I wanted to stay in tonight, and Carl laid the charm on thick, telling me what a good night it would be. I owed him because of God knows what, flashing that dead smirk. I refused. He got angry. He told me I didn't need to be such a bitch about it. I thought that we were friends. The lot. I refused. Finally, everyone figured out that I wouldn't be persuaded. I hugged one of my girlfriends goodbye, whispering in her ear not to ride back with Carl under any circumstances. When they all left, I walked back to the area with the sign-out sheet to cross my name off, since obviously I wasn't going anywhere. I saw the sheet, saw where my name was, and my heart dropped. My name had already been fucking erased.